All right, grace and peace to you all. This is Mike the Black Reformed Baptist coming to you again with another debate that I'll be moderating today. We have a very interesting topic, and I think you all will be excited to hear these two debaters present their cases. The title of the debate is right there. It's which is more reasonable, atheism or Christianity? And I have two distinguished gentlemen here to debate the topics. For the atheist side, we have Travis Wooley. Is that I said your last name correct? Right?
Yep.
Wooley. Okay, excellent. And Anthony English will be presenting the worldview. So I'm going to give the two gentlemen an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then I'll give you the format of the debate, and we will jump right into it. So since Anthony, I think you're going first, right? In the debate, you'll be presenting first.
Yes.
So I'm going to let Travis have the first word in the introduction. Go ahead, Travis. Take it away.
Okay, well, hello. My name is Travis Wooley. I'm 24. I live in Michigan. My background is in computer science as well as engineering and automotive technologies. I work for Jacobs Engineering. It's one of the largest engineering firms in the country. And I am contracted out through them to work in one of the research laboratories for Ford Motor Company. And I will be representing the atheist side of this debate.
All right, all right. Thank you, Travis. We have something in common. I think we found that out on Periscope, though, that we're both computer scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, you do it for a living. I don't.
Oh, hey. And Anthony English. Introduce yourself, brother.
All right. I am 26 years old, living in Marietta, California, which is Riverside County. I am a married man of 3.5 years, two boys under the age of 2, so that's been exciting. I've been a Christian since August of 1998. 9 years old is when I became a Christian, when God saved me. I am currently working at Verizon Wireless and have been for the past, it'll be 5.5 years right now, as a sales rep, so that's been a good company. And I am currently finishing up my undergraduate degree in business with a concentration in global business management. Been studying theology and a little philosophy on the side. So that's just a little bit about me.
Excellent, excellent. All right. So what we're going to do first is I'll give a rundown of the entire debate, and then I'll actually, as we move through each section, I'll be giving little updates on where we are. And I'm charged with keeping time and making sure that the debate runs smoothly. So first, let me get to the format of the debate. We're going to have, it's an hour-long debate. We'll have 2 10-minute opening statements, first by Anthony and then by Travis. And then we'll alternate in that same pattern of 5-minute rebuttals by both speakers, Anthony then Travis. And then 2 sections of 5-minute cross-examination, Anthony, Travis, and then we'll have 5-minute closing statements. Anthony will start, and then Travis will have the last word. And I'll just be here to keep time again and to make sure the debate runs smoothly, as usual. We thank you all for those of you who are watching live and for those of you who are watching on YouTube later. So I'm going to remove myself from the equation and begin by letting Anthony start with his opening statement.
All right.
Anthony, I will start on your mark, sir.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in and watching, whether through replay or through tuning in live. And I want to thank my friend Travis for being willing to debate. And today we are debating on which worldview is reasonable. My assertion is that Christianity is the only reasonable worldview. Instead of debating specific evidences and facts, I want to go to the foundation. There's a story told of a man who believed that he was dead, although he was alive. And his wife couldn't convince him that he was alive. She takes him to the doctor. His doctor runs tests, shows that he's alive, but the gentleman just does not believe it. So the doctor asked the man, listen, do dead men bleed? And he goes, of course not. He goes, okay, so he takes a needle and he pokes the gentleman in the finger and blood comes out. The gentleman looks at his finger, sees the blood and goes, well, by George, I guess dead men really do bleed. You see, We have the same info and evidence, but we come to different conclusions. Therefore, we must address our worldview in which we see and interpret the facts. I'm defending Christian theism this afternoon. I'm defending that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, that in Christ are hidden all the treasures and of wisdom and knowledge. Neither of us are neutral. I stand upon God's self-authenticating revelation, the Bible. My position is that Christianity is the only reasonable position, and I'll show it in 4 points: the laws of logic, law of uniformity, objective morality, and man's greatest dilemma. Number 1, the laws of logic. The 3 laws of logic are the law of identity, something is what it is; the law of non-contradiction, A cannot be A and non-A in the same way, the same time, in the same place; and the law of excluded middle, something's either true or it's false. You see, atheistic, naturalistic, materialistic, secular humanist perspective says that the universe is unguided, is random, is purposeless. If that's true, how do chemical and material processes produce immaterial concepts such as laws? Where do laws of logic come from? Laws that are absolute, universal, eternal, unchanging, impartial, and transcendent, which are all characteristics of logic. All attributes and characteristics of God as well, funny enough. You see, Christianity alone can account for laws of logic, for they come from God. Apologist Matt Slick says, God is transcendent. That is, he is beyond the material universe being its creator. God has originated the laws of logic because they are a reflection of his nature. Therefore, the laws of logic are absolute, and they are absolute because there is an absolute God. The atheistic worldview cannot account for the laws of logic, are absolutes, and must borrow from the Christian worldview in order to rationally argue. Humans are logical because of the image of God in us. We mirror him. Atheists use logic and are logical not because of their worldview, but in spite of it. Therefore, when Travis agreed to debate today and showed up, he already conceded the debate. For to engage in debate with the use of reason and logic is to steal from the Christian worldview in order to argue against the Christian worldview. It's sitting in God's lap in order to slap his face. It's to breathe air all the while denying it exists. Debate, logic, reason presupposes absolute truth, which presupposes and points to God Almighty. 2, the uniformity of nature. We see that in this universe and nature, there are certain laws that take place consistently. The earth circles the sun, the seasons come and go, the water cycle takes place, etc. If atheistic naturalistic materialism is correct, then we are just floating along on this planet with no purpose or guidance. So how is it possible for atheism to account for the uniformity we see in nature? How do we know that today will be like yesterday? Atheists, however, don't live this way. They live and assume the uniformity of nature or induction. They just can't account for it in their worldview. Atheists don't wake up in the morning and when they step out of bed wonder if they're going to float to the ceiling. No, they know gravity will hold them down because they assume and they appeal to the uniformity of nature. Bertrand Russell, a famous atheist who's long dead, spoke to atheists once and said that they have a problem of induction. That if you believe that today will be like yesterday, you need to justify how that is so. And if you say it's always been that way, well, that doesn't work. It's circular, it's fallacious. Therefore, again, atheism must borrow from the Christian worldview in order to not only argue against it, but to do science and to even ask for proof and evidence presupposes a uniform, constant universe and world where one can conduct experiments in order to reach conclusions. Christianity can account for the uniformity of nature. Colossians 1:16 and 17 says that all things are created through Jesus Christ and are sustained in him. Genesis 8:22 says that God keeps the seasons coming and going. And Hebrews 1:3 says that Jesus upholds the world by upholds everything by the word of his power. We all appeal to the uniformity of nature because we are in the image of God, the Imago Dei, and live in God's world, under God's rule, using God's laws. Objective morality, point 3. In an atheistic, materialistic, naturalistic, secular worldview, all we are bags of protoplasm, stardust with no intrinsic or inherent value, worth, or dignity. If this is true, what's wrong with rape, murder, the Holocaust, the Inquisition, 9/11, etc.? In fact, atheists will commonly make moral judgments about certain things in the Bible. But if all we are stardust and protoplasm, then who cares? If there's no transcendent law outside of us, then who gets to decide what is good or bad? Jeff Durbin, pastor, said, if the question, so what, is a philosophically devastating critique of your worldview, it's not one that you should hold on to any longer. Now, atheists may say, well, morality is based on what causes the greatest amount of pleasure and the least amount of pain. Well, my question is, who gets to decide that? What's the standard of pleasure and pain? And what if someone's pleasure is to cause pain? You can't say it's good or evil what they're doing. It's just a preference. Richard Dawkins, famous atheist and the evolutionary biologist, said in his book, The River Out of Eden, the universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. So according to Richard Dawkins, there is no good or evil. So rape, murder, etc. isn't wrong. It's just blind, pitiless indifference. Atheists have no leg, no foundation, no philosophical justification to call anything evil, but they do so because they steal from the Christian worldview. Now, atheists can be and are moral, but the fact is they don't have a basis for their morality. They don't have a philosophical justification. Christianity can account for objective morality, which is grounded in the perfect nature of the one true God who never changes, which is revealed in his self-revelation, the Bible. We can say the above events are objectively evil because we are made in the imago Dei. We have his law written on our conscience, and we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. And love, according to the scriptures, does no harm to his neighbor. Atheism cannot account for morality, yet it uses it because deep down atheists know God. And number 4, man's greatest dilemma. The greatest dilemma is, how can a man be made right with his creator? Atheism cannot answer that, of course. Christianity does. Christianity teaches that we are created in the image of God. Sin has entered our world because of our first parents, and it has separated us from God. We break his law, which is sin, and we are deserving of his wrath in the lake of fire. Yet Jesus comes, and he lives the perfect life we couldn't live, dies the death we should have died, and then rose again from the dead. And all those who repent, who turn from their sin, and trust in Jesus alone, receives that relationship with God. They receive that right communion with him. You see, Psalm 14:1 and Romans 1:18-21 says that the fool has said in his heart there is no God, because they know he exists, yet they suppress the truth in their wickedness, their evil. They stand upon God and depend on him to make sense of their lives, yet they deny him with their mouths. So tonight, I want you who are watching to watch for one thing. I want you to see if what we are standing upon philosophically comports with what is coming out of our mouths. Travis is next in his opening statement, and he will undoubtedly make knowledge, maybe some scientific, truth, and moral claims, appealing to the uniformity of nature, all the while his atheistic, secular, humanistic worldview cannot account for them. In fact, it clashes against it. He will be inconsistent, which shows a flawed worldview. I've shown that the Christian worldview is the only one that makes sense of these 4 points and, in fact, rationality. Therefore, Christianity is the only reasonable worldview. Atheism, therefore, is found to be bankrupt, absurd, and wanting. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anthony.
Welcome.
A 10-minute opening statement by Travis Wooley. Travis, I will begin on your mark. Let me unmute you, I think. Hold on one second. Yeah, let me unmute you. Are you muted? Have you muted yourself, Travis? Okay. Let's see. Hold on one second. We're gonna. It says that you're muted, but I can't unmute you for some reason. Uh-oh. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
Sure can.
Okay.
All
well,
right.
first off, I'd like to thank Mike for moderating this debate, and thank Anthony for offering me the opportunity to make my case tonight. Tonight's question is, what is more reasonable, Christianity or atheism? First, I'd like to address the former in my opening statement, and I'll get to the accusations that were made in my rebuttal. So, if the numbers matter, clearly Christianity is not reasonable. There's been over 1,000 gods in human history that we know about. In every case, the belief in the proposed deities been made unreasonable by our physical understanding of the universe. It used to be thought that angels pushed the stars and planets in their orbits. This problem was solved by Newton. It used to be thought that every creature was specially created to fit its environment. Darwin showed us that the environment itself is what drives the process of natural selection, in which genetic mutations that are beneficial to the survival of the population get selected for, and those that are detrimental to the survival die out before getting the chance to pass on their genetic information. Science has also made great progress in understanding the possible origins of life on our planet. In fact, amino acids and advanced peptides have been found in the depths of interstellar space, and that sunlight and water, what are believed to be the two most critical ingredients for life, are everywhere in the universe. Physics has also solved the problem of creation of matter. No longer is a God necessary for matter to be created and destroyed. Surely there must be room for God left at the beginning of the universe, right? Actually, no. The theoretical physicist Lawrence Krauss, among many others, have shown us that the emergence of discrete space-times, universes, is not just possible in the absence of space, time, energy, and particles, but is in fact predicted by the laws of quantum physics. Furthermore, there's a great many aspects of Christianity that are plainly unreasonable given our current understanding of physics and biology, such as the virgin birth, Jonah and the whale, transubstantiation, talking snakes and bushes, and the mass resurrection of the dead, just to name a few. Despite the unreasonableness of the claims of Christianity, there's really nothing new about the story of Jesus. In 3100 BCE, the Egyptian god Horus was said to have had 12 disciples, was born of a virgin, a birth announced by a star that was attended by 3 wise men. He was later baptized by Anup the Baptizer. He performed miracles, including raising at least one person from the dead, walked on water, was crucified, buried in a tomb, and resurrected. Okay, in 3000 BC, Krishna, a Hindu god, was born after his mother was impregnated by a god. His birth was attended by angels, wise men, and shepherds, and he was presented with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Like Jesus, when Krishna was born, a tyrant had ordered the slaughter of all newborns. He was also baptized in a river, performed miracles, raised the dead, healed the deaf and the blind, used parables to teach charity and love, and rose from the dead, ascended to heaven, and it is believed will someday return to earth to battle the prince of evil. In 2000 BC, Mithra was in another example of a virgin birth. On December 25th, let's see, where did I leave off? Technical difficulties. Okay, got it. Like I was saying, in 2000 BC, Mithra was another example of virgin birth. On December 21st, he was swaddled in a manger, swaddled and placed in a manger where he was tended to by shepherds. Like Jesus and Horus, he had 12 companions, performed miracles, identified with both the lion and the lamb, and sacrificed his life to save the world, only to be resurrected 3 days later. Even if the story of Jesus wasn't almost completely plagiarized from existing myths in the region at the time, we have almost no reason to believe the claims of the Bible in the first place. The New Testament we have today, well, really hundreds of different Bibles, are translations of copies of copies, which have literally thousands of discrepancies between them, many of which feature known Christian interpolations of stories passed down through oral traditions of Iron Age peasants who didn't even know the earth orbited the sun. If we're honest about what the Bible is, it is hearsay evidence from anonymous sources told decades to centuries after the fact. And even if the Bible were a direct account of eyewitness testimony, we know how unreasonable eyewitness testimony can be even today. There are thousands upon thousands of people who claim to have had encounters with aliens, Bigfoot, and the Loch Ness Monster, yet the most reasonable people don't find this sort of testimony convincing. If you need yet another testament to the unreliability of eyewitness testimony, look to the recent example of the East Asian mystic Satya Sai Baba. His devotees ascribed all the miracles of Jesus to him. He read minds, foretold the future, raised the dead, was born of a virgin. He may sound like a fringe figure, however, when he died in 2011, nearly 1 million people showed up to his funeral. How could it possibly be reasonable to not believe claims such as these? Claims attested by hundreds of thousands of contemporaneous eyewitnesses, and yet when nearly the same claims are set 2,000 years in the past, and attested to only by translations of copies of ancient Greek manuscripts, the oldest of which dates to decades after the birth of the supposed Messiah, it suddenly becomes reasonable? Not only is there clearly reasonable doubt to find the God of Christianity not guilty of existing, I think there's credible arguments for thinking that he is in fact innocent of the charge. One of my personal favorite arguments is the free will argument for the non-existence of God. God is commonly described as a being with omniscience, omnipotence, and free will. These, however, are logically contradictory attributes, much like ascribing the attribute of marriedness to a bachelor. The argument pretty much goes like this. Premise 1, if a being is omniscient, then it knows its own future actions infallibly. Premise 2, if future actions are known infallibly, they cannot be changed. Premise 3, if a being cannot change its own future actions, it is either because it lacks freedom or ability. Conclusion, therefore God is either omniscient and not free, which would really make him like a robot, just operating deterministically, or omniscient and not omnipotent, which means he is not really the greatest possible being, or omnipotent and free but not omniscient, which once again takes away from God's greatness and removes the possibility of God having any type of grand plan. We also have the argument from evil. Now, my opponent has said that I have no justification for my morality. This is simply not the case. What I mean when I say something is good or moral is that it positively contributes to the health, happiness, and well-being of conscious creatures. When I say something is bad or immoral, what I mean is that it needlessly detracts from the health, happiness, and well-being of conscious creatures. Given those definitions, it becomes immediately apparent there are objective statements that can be made regarding morality. Classically, the argument from evil is stated as such, God here being defined as an omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent being. Premise 1, an omnibenevolent being would not want evil to exist. Premise 2, an omnipotent being would have the power to eradicate evil. Premise 3, an omniscient being would know how to do so without violating free will. Premise 4, evil exists. Conclusion, given 1 through 4, God does not exist. How am I doing on time? You're muted.
Yeah, you're at 222 left to go.
222?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can squeak in some of the counters to precept then. Okay, so let's go with the laws of logic. I have this feeling that what he meant by that I can't justify the laws of logic is that they're things, or that he's just misunderstanding what atheism is. Atheism is not a worldview. It's a single statement on a single topic. It's all that the word atheist addresses is a belief in God. What you really need to take down is naturalism, which has its own set of axiomatic assumptions or properly basic beliefs. The properly basic beliefs or axiomatic statements of naturalism are 1, that reality exists, 2, that reality is intelligible, that means you can learn something from it, and 3, that models with predictive capability are more useful than models without predictive capability. From those 3 statements, you can essentially build up all of naturalism, the worldview that has methodologically given you all of the technology we enjoy today, including the computer that you're watching this on. All right, that's pretty much all I have for my opening statement. I'll concede whatever time I have left.
All right, all right. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Travis. Can you see the timer? Like, I think it takes over my my box there, the timer on the right-hand side.
Yeah, no, I can't see a timer.
Oh, gotcha. You're probably looking at notes and not yourself right now. All right, so let's keep moving right along. We are currently at the 5-minute rebuttal sections of the debate. First up is Anthony. He will be rebutting for 5 minutes. And Anthony, I will begin on your mark.
All right, I want to thank Travis. As I said in my opening statement, he made knowledge claims which, once again, are inconsistent with atheism, therefore conceding the debate. He made a lot of erroneous claims. Let's go with, first of all, science. He said science has disproved God. Well, science can only test and prove or disprove the natural world. It can't disprove anything outside of the natural world. And since God is outside of nature, he's the one who created it, he's supernatural. So science cannot disprove God. It's possible to disprove a negative, as they say. Um, I want to explain Horus and Jesus. That's something that's been debunked for centuries. Only those who watch Zeitgeist or those who are on the internet would bring that up. Horus was the son of Isis and Osiris, not of virgin birth. Osiris happened to be dismembered at the time, 14 pieces, but that didn't stop Isis. She was powerful enough to reassemble and reanimate him enough to get pregnant. Very necromantic. The whole 12 disciples. The 19th century poet Gerald Massey is the first source of this claim. That's poetic license. Raised from the dead. He didn't raise anyone from the dead. Asir is another name for Osiris, and it was Isis who remembered and restored him, animated him and restored him. Crucified and then risen on the third day. Crucifixion didn't come into use until the 6th century BCE, so Horus was never crucified. In fact, he never died, so no resurrection. And then actually Horus's birth is celebrated in October/November. No Christian believes that Jesus was truly born on December 25th, just when we celebrate his birth. He said that because of the supernatural, he has an anti-supernatural basis, again, the presupposition, but he has faith in that. He cannot prove it is unjustifiable. If God exists, which he does, him raising the dead is easy. He's all-powerful after all. He's talked about morality. He said that morality is based on what brings the society and people the best pleasure and the greatest good. And then pretty much that, like as I said in my opening statement, does not provide it provides the least amount of pain. My question is, says who? Travis, that's just your personal opinion, my friend. What if someone says, well, my greatest good is to kill 6 million Jews? Is the good for me as a person and as society? Who are you to say that that individual and that society is wrong? What's wrong with causing people harm? If all we are bags of protoplasm, if all we are just this cosmic broccoli, as Dan Barker says, if all that exists is blind, pitiless indifference, as Richard Dawkins says, then who cares about causing pain to people? Again, in my worldview, I can account for it. We're made in the image of God, therefore we should not cause pain. That's something that it is contradictory. Atheism is a worldview in the sense of, you say there's no God, that impacts everything else as well. That impacts what you think about the Bible. It impacts what you think about church. It impacts your view of reality to some degree. And he says something that's also been debunked, and no historian would hold to, no true historian who really knows his stuff and is not letting his presupposition blind him. The reliability of the New Testament, the Bible. You said it was written centuries after the fact. That's simply not the case. If you look at Homer and the Iliad, existing copies we have are 643. They was written 500 years after the fact, or they say after the copies. The New Testament has 24,000 existing copies at this moment. And the years between the original and the earliest surviving copies are 40 to 70 years. You read 1 Corinthians 15, and Paul says, listen, these are how many people saw Jesus alive after he was crucified. And he mentions them so people at that time could go ask him. In the book of Luke, Luke was one of the greatest historians we have. Even secular historians believe that. Luke does what we would do when it comes to footnotes. He makes claims, and then he says, listen, this happened, and you can ask pretty much Alexander. You can ask this person. In other words, what he's doing is saying, listen, for those of you who are reading this, go ahead and check with these people to see if what I'm saying is true. Also, in the book of Acts, Luke, again, says that plenty of the Pharisees and the priests came to believe in Jesus as Messiah. Now, this was written at a time where the people could have went and asked the priests and the Pharisees to see if this was true. So to say that the New Testament was written centuries after is historically false. All in all, atheism is false because it cannot provide the preconditions of intelligibility. You make knowledge claims, yet you don't have knowledge in your worldview. Christianity is true because of the impossibility of the contrary, as Greg Bonson says. And every time you make these knowledge statements, you once again presuppose my worldview in order to make sense of yours and in order to argue against my worldview. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Anthony. We have a 5-minute rebuttal now by Travis. Travis, take it away.
He's muted.
Okay, finally, the bit I was looking forward to, taking down precept. One of you's not muted. There we go. Okay, so apparently you have this clever way, Anthony, of characterizing my statements in a manner which they were not given. When you were debunking Horus, those were claims I attributed to Mithra, a different god that also has roughly the same attributes of Jesus. You compared the reliability of the New Testament to Homer. The problem with, granted that we may have roughly the same evidence for, the existence of Homer or Aristotle or such like that to the existence of Jesus, is that people don't kill other people for what Homer said or for, what Aristotle said. People don't pass laws regarding that. It doesn't affect us in the same way as Christianity, nor do those books affect your immortal soul. Furthermore, there's only really two extra-biblical accounts of early Christianity of the existence of Jesus. You have Josephus, which is largely considered a forgery by pretty much every secular ancient historian and biblical scholar. And then you have Tacitus, which is considered by the likes of Richard Carrier and Bart Ehrman to be a Christian interpolation. It was added in after the fact. The bits of Tacitus we do have also conveniently leave out the years 29, 30, and 31 AD. Pretty formative years in the life of Jesus. Let's see. Uniformity of nature and problem of induction. Okay, let's go with me justifying knowledge. I define knowledge as justified true belief, a definition you're probably familiar with. So for something to be knowledge, it must be justified and true, and you must believe it. Apparently, according to Anthony, I also have no basis for truth. Truth to me is that which comports to the reality I experience. So whatever agrees with what I am taking in through my sense data and processing with my brain. That is what I regard to be reality. Foundations of my belief, that's not really relevant because atheism is not really a belief system, as I've stated, despite the assertions otherwise. There's also the problem of just asserting that the Bible is true, as if that was just one presupposition. Stating that the Bible is true or that the God of Christianity exists and making that your foundation for your belief, it's not a single presupposition. It's a label for a set of billions of presuppositions, referencing not just the nature of God, but the nature of the reality we experience, many of which have been debunked and disproven by millions of scientists in nearly every discipline across the entire planet for hundreds of years. Essentially, the presuppositionalist is trying to avoid Occam's razor by slapping a single label on the massive set of presuppositions, so it appears they're only making one claim. As I alluded to earlier, naturalism, the philosophy I generally follow, is only built out of three assumptions, upon which you can build the entire philosophy. From those three presuppositions, you get the laws of logic. Once you admit that reality exists and that it's intelligible, you can formulate the laws of logic, because the laws of logic are not extant objects. They are not things. They are descriptions of the reality we experience. We call them laws because in all of human experience, we have not seen something be A and not A. We have not, seen something be, everything that we have seen has been consistent with itself. So A equals A, not A equals not A, and then the law of excluded middle. Those have all held for all of human experience. That's why we call them laws, not because they are prescriptive. The universe is not obeying these laws. They are descriptions of how the universe behaves. How am I doing on time, if one of you can unmute yourself? I don't have the timer up.
34 seconds.
34 seconds. Okay. Let's see. Even if I grant that the Bible is true as only a single presupposition, you still need to grant the axiomatic assumptions of naturalism in order to receive any type of knowledge or revelation from your deity. Put another way, in order to read the scriptures or view the creation or to receive revelation, you must first assume that reality exists and that you can learn something about it. If you don't assume that reality exists, whatever revelation you believe you're receiving could simply be part of some delusion. If you assume reality exists, but not that you can learn something about it, then you've negated any possibility of receiving the revelation. So in reality, he's borrowing from my worldview, the naturalistic worldview, because you need to make the same presuppositions I make in order to receive your revelation.
All right, that's time. Thank you, Travis. Okay, so now we're going to have a 5-minute cross-examination period by Anthony to Travis. I would ask that you would keep the questions short and keep the answers as well short. Don't draw out the answers for long periods of time in order to not have to answer many questions. And questioner, let's get as many questions as we can in the 5 minutes. And I will begin when Anthony begins his first question.
All right, Travis, I apologize. I could have sworn I heard you say Horus, but to go along with that, Horus and Mithra, why would Orthodox, ultra-conservative Jews use an abomination such as pagan religion to take from and try to create their own God and new religion? Why would Jews create Jesus, so to say, if your worldviews correct, your views are correct, why would they do that in order to create their own religion?
Okay, so your question is, why would Jews basically plagiarize from other myths?
Especially because they hated pagan religion and they were known to be orthodox to the Talmud, to the Torah. Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty simple explanation, because when you want to get rid of another group, you just start changing your group to either bring them in or you kill them off. By changing their myths and the backstory and giving Jesus some of the same properties as their God, it increases the probability that they're going to convert to that religion.
Are you done?
Yeah, so essentially they're just trying to gain followers.
Now, why would they gain followers why would they create a crucified Messiah when they expected a Messiah that would come in power? They expected a Messiah that would conquer Rome. Why would they create a Messiah that would be crushed by Rome, the very enemies that they wanted the Messiah to crush himself?
I have no idea why they would do that exactly.
Okay, so that's just your opinion then, and as well as the fallacious claims of the other historians, some historians who claim Mithra and Jesus and Horus are all one. Okay, you said reality is what you experience, so is it not universal or objective? Is reality only what goes on in your mind, or does it go out on in other people's mind as well? Is there one reality that we all experience?
While I do think that there is an objective reality that exists, as subjective beings, we have no mechanism by which to determine whether the reality that we experience is that objective reality. There has been no problem, or no answer to the problem of hard solipsism. It is still a philosophical problem.
How do you know that no one else can know if they are, if we're living in an actual reality? How do you know what objective reality is?
As I just alluded to, you can't know exactly what objective reality is if it exists. You are stuck experiencing the reality that you experience.
How do you know that you can't know? How do you know that what we can't know? You made the class want to know, how do you know we can't know what objective reality is?
Because there has been no demonstrated method in which to do so.
How do you know so, though? Because, again, as a Christian, I believe we have a revelational epistemology. God has revealed things to us such that we can know them for certain. My question to you is, you keep saying, you keep making these claims. How do you know? What science experiment? Because you did say science disproved God and all these things. I would like to also know, second question you can answer, which science experiment has disproved God?
Well, to clarify, I haven't said that science disproved God. If you look back, that was not in my opening statement. I said that in many cases, science has made God unnecessary to explain certain phenomena.
Why is that? I guess my question.
The last question, or are we just going to jam
together? No. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Answer the last question. I apologize.
I've forgotten what the last question was. Remind me.
Yeah. How do you I kind of forgot to. I think I asked, how do you know that we can't know what objective reality is? You said because of your methods.
You're playing the Psi 10 game here. So what you're doing is, no matter what I say, you're going to keep on going and asking, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? The problem is,
just because
given my understanding of philosophy, there exists no mechanism in which a subjective observer can know with absolute certainty whether or not they are experiencing objective, absolute reality.
Okay, so when we say that as image bearers of God, we can know because God has given us a sound mind, logical minds, we know this is reality, would you say that that's false? And if so, how do you know that that statement is false? How do you absolutely know? Not your opinion, but how do you know, fact-wise?
Well, given my understanding of existence, you have no mechanism to determine whether or not the revelation that you claim to receive is authentic revelation or is merely part of your grand delusion.
All right, time. All right, we're going to move on to our next set of rebuttal, cross-examination. Cross-examination, 5 minutes. And Travis, you have the floor. You will be asking Anthony questions. I will start the timer with your first question.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and carry on the last question. Anthony, how do you know that the revelation you received is authentic?
Because without it, you couldn't make sense of that question. Without it, we can't make sense of reality. Without it, we can't know anything. So that's how I know. And the same way that you know revelation from God.
Okay, so you're directly calling me a liar here, is what you're doing.
I'm saying that you are self-deceived because sin darkens our reasoning faculties, and therefore you need to not only be saved eternally, but your mind needs to be redeemed as well. Jesus doesn't just come to save our souls for eternity, he comes to save our reasoning now. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so I guess I'll rephrase the same question again. You said that God revealed the truths to you in a way such that you can be certain. How did he do that?
The same way he does it for you. Creation, our conscience, and his word, special revelation. The Bible. So, yeah.
Okay, so how do you determine that your experience of creation, your experience of God's word, or even if you saw God and received direct revelation from a deity, how have you determined that you are not delusional?
Easy, because the Bible says that God has given me a sound mind. We're not delusional because the same way you know, we have revelation from God. We are logical beings. We are rational. We know that I know that I'm not delusional because of the revelation of God.
I don't think you quite understand what I'm saying here. You're getting these answers from the book, correct?
I'm getting it from God's word, yes, sir.
Okay, so you're getting these answers from God's word. How do you know that God's word, that the Bible that you're reading actually exists and that you're not a brain in a vat? By what mechanism are you determining that you are experiencing objective reality and not a simulation or, a dream, etc.?
Well, I see reality about me, but ultimately I can go to, once again, God's self-revelation. The way that I know I'm not in a brain in a vat is the same way you know, deep down, that you're not a brain in a vat. God has made these things certain that we can know for certain. If God exists, which he does, but for the sake of argument, let's say if God exists, he can make sure that we all know intrinsically that we're not some brain in a vat, or we're not in the matrix, or not in some delusion, that we experience reality as he has created it to be. Because we are image bearers.
And I'll ask you once again, how did God reveal that in such a way that we can't know? We've already determined that what you're reading in the Bible, your entire conscious experience, could be a delusion. So how is God revealing it to you internally that you're experiencing reality in such a way that you can be certain?
Again, you're asking a Christian, so I'm going to give you the answer from the Bible because that is my final ultimate authority. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Psalm 19, that the creation, actually I'll read it. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent for the sun, and I can keep reading on. In other words, God has revealed it through his creation, through conscience, or knowledge of right or wrong, the fact that we are made in his image, his word, the Bible. We know it through what we appeal to, the laws of uniformity, the laws of logic, just our experience.
We're limited on time here, Anthony, so I'm just going to ask this one more time. You keep,
And I'm going to give you the same answer. I just want to let you know so you don't, keep asking the same question, but continue.
I'm just saying, you keep appealing to things that are part of your subjective experience. You have not demonstrated any mechanism by which you can determine that your subjective experience matches objective reality. All you keep doing is claiming, the Bible.
Wait, is this a rebuttal or is this a question and answer time?
This is a question.
Because I'm actually waiting for a question right now.
Yes, how have you determined that these things that are part of your subjective experience match objective reality?
Easy.
You cannot.
Actually, I did not subjectively authenticate that. God reveals it to me, and I bow my knee to His revelation as a creature, and I don't suppress the truth and the righteousness like you do, my friend, and create a worldview and steal from my worldview in order to make sense of yours. So that's how I know.
All right.
Okay, let me just ask. Time. Okay.
Yeah. You got another section though, Travis. So you can continue that in the next 5-minute cross-examination. Okay. So now we have a 5-minute cross-exam. Anthony to Travis, the second section. So Anthony, I will begin the timer on your mark.
Okay. Travis, is it possible for you to know things for 100% certainty?
Yes.
Okay, and how so?
Well, how about I give you an example of something I know 100% for certain? Will that do?
Yes. Remember, keep it short. But go ahead.
I know that I exist.
How do you know that you exist?
Because I'm having an experience.
How do you know that you have an experience?
Because
How do you
I'm
know that
having
you're
an
not a
experience. It is true definitionally. This is called the primacy of existence.
No, I agree with you that you're doing it, but what I'm asking you, so are you using your senses to come to a knowledge of your experience? Are you using your reasoning to do such?
My senses are part of my experience.
Okay. How do you know your
my
senses?
cognitive abilities? So you don't need to make a determination that you're having an experience.
Okay, so how do you know that your senses and reasoning are valid?
How do I know that my senses and reasoning are valid? I know my senses are valid by evolutionary necessity. The creatures in the past that had less accurate senses died out. The creatures with more accurate senses went on to reproduce, and we are the result of those people. I also know that my senses are valid because senses are not one thing. Your senses are independent and in fact processed by different areas of your brain. So your sight is dependent from your sense of touch and taste and smell.
So basically you're using your senses and reasoning to validate your senses and reasoning.
I am using my independent and mutually corroborative senses to justify each other, and I'm using my reasoning to process that sense information.
Okay, so you're using your senses and reasoning to validate your senses and reasoning. Even if you're using different components according to your view, you're using your senses and reasoning to validate your senses and reasoning, correct?
No. See, what you're doing here is you're conflating all of your senses into one thing. It's like saying that...
Wait, Travis, hold on. Are you using a part of your senses and reasoning in order to validate another part of your senses and reasoning? You say I'm conflating, I'm putting it all together. Are you using one part of your senses and reasoning to validate another part?
Yes, but those parts are independent.
Hold on, okay, that is circular. You're validating your senses of reasoning by you're validating your senses of reasoning by using your senses of reasoning. That's why I said the atheistic worldview cannot account for laws of logic, of knowledge, of certainty. You have to appeal to the Christian worldview in order to make sense of those things. Now let me ask you a question. You said that my view of reality is subjective. How do you know that to be true?
It is definitionally true. You are a subject, so your experience is therefore subjective.
Okay, now we all experience reality. We all have subjective feelings and experiences, but how do you know that I'm not actually taking in objective reality is what I'm asking you.
Well, because to actually take in objective reality, I'd assume one would have to be in all places at all times, and you'd appear to be a contingent being.
Exactly, and that's why, as a Christian, we say that we either have to have all knowledge in the universe in order to have certainty, or we have knowledge from someone who does have we have revelation for someone who does have all knowledge. What I'm saying, as a Christian, we have revelation from a God, the only true God, the one that you know exists, and He's revealed things to us such that we can be certain of them. So I agree with you that we need revelation from someone who does have a knowledge, God. Now, you said that the Bible. Let's go with the Bible real quick. We have a couple seconds. You said that it was written centuries after. Where do you get that information from?
Well, I actually said that it was written between, decades to centuries after. So parts of the Bible were written decades after. Like the earliest copies of Mark, that little scrap that we have about the size of a business card, that's dated to around, 50 to 70 AD, something like that. So fairly shortly after Jesus purportedly lived. But the oldest parts of the Gospels we have were written, centuries after, as late as 500 AD for the, newest parts of the Bible we have.
Okay, what evidence do you have of that? Where could you point someone to if they were to ask you that? Because that's just an assertion, right?
No, you could look to the works of Richard Carrier or Bart Ehrman or Robert Price. All of them have written books and done studies and have degrees in ancient history.
All right, that's time. Let's see. Okay, so now we have another 5-minute cross-examination from Travis to Anthony. And Travis, I will begin the timer on your first question.
Okay, so there was a big fuss made about how I cannot justify my objective morality. Don't you choose your standard of morality just as subjectively as I do? You subjectively choose that God is the standard, correct?
No, incorrect.
You don't choose God as your standard.
Actually, I submit to God as my standard. I don't have a choice as a creature. In the sense of, as a sinful person, I could choose something else. But since I understand that He is my creator and I am His creature, I am His slave, I am His servant, He is my heavenly Father, I submit, rightfully so, to His rule and authority. So no, I don't have the right to choose someone else other than God.
The right I'm not so much concerned with, but do you have the freedom to choose your own standard?
According to my sinful nature, I could have rebelled against God and chosen something else, yes.
Okay, so most people, most of the time, choose what they mean by words like good, bad, moral, and immoral. Would you agree with that?
No, I would actually disagree. Christians don't. And actually, I would even say Muslims don't, even though their worldview is bankrupt as well. Other religions will hold their religion standards as good or evil, but speaking that from a Christian standpoint, no. We don't. We take what God says to be moral and evil, good, bad, right and wrong, therefore they're on.
Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is these people have no choice but to use those standards because they have no choice but to believe in their respective religions.
What I'm saying is that if they are true to their beliefs, then they will not take anything else. Do we have the sinful choice to rebel against God, the one true God of the Bible? Yes. Is it, again, right? No. But yes, I have the sinful choice to rebel against God and to choose a different standard, as you have.
Okay. So you would not agree that definitions of words are inherently arbitrary?
Explain your statement, my question again. I'm sorry.
There aren't, like capital D definitions of words out in the cosmos. That words are just strings.
100%. Because I believe in it. Yeah, I believe in a uniform nature. So I believe that words won't lose. Words have meanings, which again is pulling to uniformity, which presupposes my worldview. But yes, I do.
Okay, see, that's a problem then. Words don't inherently have meanings. Words have usages. What really matters when we're using language is that the person that we're communicating with understands what we mean by the words we say. So when I'm saying that what is moral is that which positively contributes to the health, happiness, and well-being of conscious creatures. That's all I mean when I say something is moral. If you mean something else by the word moral, then clearly I'm not concerned with that. And if you want it, you can have the word moral, and I'll choose some other arbitrary string of letters and syllables to represent what I mean.
But I thought you said that it was objective. If it's objective, it doesn't matter what my view is. Objective means it is fixed outside of me. So if rape is wrong, it's wrong whether I think it's right or not.
No, I said.
Am I correct?
Well, I said that once you accept the definitions that I laid out for morality, good, bad, and evil, that there are objective things you can say about morality. So if you accept that what is moral is what positively contributes to the health, happiness, and well-being of conscious creatures, then you can objectively say that drinking water is good for a person because it contributes to the health, happiness, and well-being of that conscious creature. Conversely, if you accept the definition that I laid out of immoral, it becomes immediately apparent that drinking battery acid is objectively bad, given those definitions.
Now, I understand that. I understand your view, but in a world that is random and chaotic, and according to Dawkins, you can disagree with him, he says there is truly no good or evil. That seems to be a consistent atheist. That is a consistent atheist. So is there objectively good and evil? No matter what anyone thinks, no matter what anyone's view is there actual objective morality in the universe? Is rape always wrong no matter what time, place, society, no matter what anyone says, is rape always objectively morally wrong?
Time, gentlemen, time. All right, so I hope you've been enjoying the debate so far. We are coming to the final two portions. We have a closing statement by Anthony, which will be 5 minutes long, and a closing statement by Travis, who will have the last word. Obviously not after my word, but he'll have the last word of the debaters. So we will allow Anthony to have his say for 5 minutes, and then Travis for 5 minutes. So Anthony, I'll start the timer on your mark.
My friend Travis made the statement that I am borrowing from his worldview. That's impossible because his worldview, once again, cannot account for things such as the uniformity of nature, the laws of logic, objective morality, as we just saw in this last question and answer cross-examination portion, nor man's greatest dilemma. One thing I remember talking to my wife about was that if atheism is correct, when people are laying in a hospital bed dying, atheism does not satisfy the emotional, the relational components that we experience. All an atheist would be able to do, if he was consistent, is say, listen, unfortunately, that is bad what's happening. It sucks, but who cares? We live in a unguided world and universe with no purpose. A Christian can say, listen, God can make sense of suffering. There's a reason for it. We've spoken a lot tonight. I said earlier in my opening statement that Travis would make knowledge statements, and there he has, and scientific statements, yet without God, there is no basis to do science. If 2 plus 2 is 4 today, according to the atheistic worldview, tomorrow things could change, and 2 plus 2 could equal 52 tomorrow. There is no objective philosophical justification to do science, math, or even for knowledge. He says that he can have certain knowledge, yet he justifies his knowledge by using senses and reasoning, and he justifies the senses and reasoning by using senses and reasoning. That's circular, that's fallacious. I appeal to someone as something outside of myself, revelation from a God that Travis knows exists, yet for whatever reason is suppressing that truth in his wickedness, in his unrighteousness. And I am saying that it is God who is the very precondition of intelligibility for all that we're doing. Everything that we've done so far in this debate has appealed to God. It cannot be done. Even the sentences out of our mouth appeals to God. It presupposes the Christian worldview. He must borrow from the Christian worldview in order to make sense of it. And this is why I said earlier that Jesus didn't come just to save our souls for eternity. Jesus came to save our bodies. He came to redeem the cosmos that are affected by sin. And he came to affect our minds. And that's why it says in Romans 12, Romans 12, 1 and 2, to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, because sin is corrupted. It's darkened. And the natural man, according to 1 Corinthians 2, does not receive the things of the Spirit of God. They're foolishness to him. But the preaching of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. He made claims concerning the Bible, but again, how could you have truth in a world without God? He may, in his closing statement, try to address that, but once again, remember, he's standing on the Christian worldview. In the atheistic worldview, in order to have absolute truth, you have to have absolute laws of logic. You have to have an absolute God fixed, unless, because if you don't, it's all subjective. Just like I asked him, was rape always bad, no matter what anybody says? I didn't hear an answer. Now, granted, the time ran out, but if he says it's always bad, then that's inconsistent with this atheistic, naturalistic, materialistic, secular, humanistic worldview. So, what is it that I want to leave you with today is that Christianity is the only reasonable worldview. It's the only one that makes sense of everything that we do on a daily basis, to appeal to laws of logic, to experience and to appeal to the uniformity of nature, to believe in absolute truth and objective morality, and it satisfies our greatest need. And our greatest need is to be redeemed, is to be saved, is to be brought back from our dead and sin state, and to be brought back into a right relationship with our Creator, which only comes through Jesus, his perfect life, his sacrificial death, and his resurrection. And see, the fact of the matter is that today, this debate was not between someone who believes in God and does not believe in God. It's someone, it wasn't someone who accepts the kingship of Jesus and then and rejects the kingship, denies the kingship of Jesus. It's those who profess the truth and others who suppress the truth. You see, once again, when Travis makes these claims, he's suppressing the truth. He has to have his hand upon God, all the while denying him with his mouth. So I would encourage Travis, I would plead with him and all of my atheistic friends to repent of their sin, to put their trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. And if you do such, you will experience reality as God meant it to be, in right relationship with him. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. We will now have Travis Wooley to finish the debate out. Travis, you have 5 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, honestly, I'm really kind of upset with how this debate ended. I've basically been called a liar for a solid hour. Apparently, I don't know what goes on in my own head. For those of you that are watching this that aren't specifically presuppositionalist Reformed Baptist Calvinists, Anthony thinks that you are lying about what you believe. He claims to have knowledge of objective reality revealed by a perfect being. But over and over again, he failed to demonstrate how he did this, how he knows these things. I asked several times by what mechanism, he has determined that the reality he's experiencing is authentic, and all he kept saying is the Bible is true in essence. Furthermore, he's been having this terrible habit of restating my views in a manner in which they were not given. Morality is not just personal, opinion. Everyone chooses their definitions of what they mean by those words. It is part of being a subject. He claimed that I did not justify knowledge. I laid out the basis for all of naturalism. I wish I could build all of naturalistic philosophy in front of you, but that would take far more than the time that I have left. Furthermore, he's asserted that we live in a creation, in a created universe. This is patently false. If you had any understanding of evolution or any understanding of physics, you would know that this is false. He claims that I cannot know truth because I am using my senses to justify my senses. I don't know what other options you have to interpret the world around you than to use your sensory data processed by your cognitive apparatus called the brain to experience reality. I think that Anthony may believe that consciousness is some magical thing created by a soul, rather than what the majority of neuroscientists think, that consciousness is what the brain is doing. How am I doing on time?
You got 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
I got 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. Okay, we ran out of time there at the end in the cross-examination about whether I think rape is always wrong. What objective means is whether something is true regardless of what any minds believe. So another good way of asking that question is, would rape be wrong if there were no minds in the universe? Well, clearly no, because if there is no minds, there is no one to be raped. Rape is wrong, in my view, because it detracts from the health, happiness, and well-being of conscious creatures. Yes, I chose that definition subjectively, but it appears to be true, and it appears to ring true to what most people care about most of the time. The majority of the religious people on the planet, and probably the majority of people that are going to watch this debate, are not presuppositionalists. They are not concerned with religion in the same way that Anthony is. They may go to church on Sunday, but God is not a huge part of their life. It's an afterthought. What do I have, like a minute left, if that?
Minute 10.
Minute 10. I don't think there's really any more that I need to touch on. I think I've sufficiently demonstrated these things. Again, it's fairly upsetting that I've just been called a liar for the majority of this debate, and that I don't know what's going on inside my own mind. I sincerely think that Anthony or any other presuppositionalist should go to the James Randi Foundation and demonstrate their mind-reading abilities and win the $1 million. And maybe give it to a secular charity where the money won't be wasted on building more needless churches. I'm just going to go ahead and concede whatever time I have left.
I'm on mute. All right. Thank you, Travis, and thank you, Anthony. I think this was probably the most lively and well organized of the debates. I think I'm getting better as a moderator, and I think the topics are becoming more refined, and they're becoming more interesting as we go along. For those that have been watching, we appreciate the time that you've taken with us. I think for this hour that we've been talking and listening and interacting. I thank Anthony for taking the time to present the Christian worldview, and I thank Travis for taking the time to present the naturalistic worldview as well as he could. I know he said it would have taken more time to do that, but defending the reasonableness of his worldview, we thank you for coming on, brother, and we will close out here. And unless the debaters want to, stick around for a little while and just chop it up, I'm going to stop.
I'll probably, talk to Travis a little bit off the air and just thank him. I appreciate the brother, and I know he's upset.
No, I'm not upset. I just like to get, I like to channel my inner Hitchens from time to time.
Well, you know what? Hopefully Hitchens repented and believed before he passed on, man. That's my hope.
I sincerely hope not.
You want hell for people? Yeah, man. I want heaven for people.
Yeah, well, all right. So before we start a new debate, I'm going to close the broadcast out. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, for those that are watching live, and then for those that will be watching in the future. Grace and peace to you all. And this has been Mike, the Black Reformed Baptist, again with another debate. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.